When I was in high school, life was a whirlwind of emotions, discoveries, and sometimes, moments that felt like they were straight out of a nightmare. I attended an all-boys Catholic school where discipline was almost as sacred as the prayers we recited every day. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, but no one really knew each other, where appearances and reputation shaped daily interactions. But one particular afternoon completely changed the way I saw not just the school, but the people around me. It was a regular Tuesday, and I was sitting at my desk, trying to pay attention in Latin class. The room was hot, the ceiling fan lazily spinning, and Mr. Braga, a man who until then had seemed designed to go unnoticed, was at the front of the room. He was the kind of person no one really noticed, short, thin, wearing those glasses that always seemed on the verge of slipping off. We knew he spoke 7 languages, an impressive feat, but one that got lost in the routine of school life. His voice was calm, almost soothing, which made the classes feel like they flowed slowly, like a serene river. He never showed exaggerated emotion, never raised his voice. He was the teacher who, somehow, always seemed at peace, even amidst the chaos that a classroom could be. Suddenly, the silence of the room was shattered by a scream. But it wasn't just any scream. It was a sound that instantly made my blood run cold. Everyone stopped, shock written on the face of every student. The scream was from a woman, and it was a scream of pure terror. I remember feeling my heart race as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Before we could react, Mr. Braga dropped the chalk he was holding and, without saying a word, ran out of the room. It was as if something inside him had awakened, something none of us had ever seen. In that moment, he was no longer the calm and distant teacher we knew. The rest of us students looked at each other, confused, and then, one by one, we started to leave the room, following the sound of the scream. When we reached the hallway, we saw that he was heading toward the girls' bathroom. We stood there, unsure of what to do. It was a situation none of us expected. A few minutes later, Mr. Braga came out of the bathroom, his expression as serene as before, but there was something in his eyes, something I had never noticed before. He walked past us without saying anything and returned to the classroom, as if nothing had happened. We stayed there, still in shock, until we decided to approach the bathroom. What we saw when we entered left a deep mark on me. The teacher, the same one we all knew for being kind and always smiling, was sitting on the floor, hugging herself, trembling. There was a knife lying near her, and the student everyone knew as quiet, but normal, was being held by 2 other teachers who had arrived shortly after Mr. Braga. We later found out that he had followed the teacher into the bathroom and, in a moment of madness, tried to assault her. When she resisted, he pulled out the knife. If it hadn't been for Mr. Braga, I don't know what would have happened. The image of the teacher, so traumatized, and the student, with empty eyes, haunted me for days. The most surprising thing happened afterward. Mr. Braga returned to the classroom and continued the lesson from where he had left off, as if nothing had happened. We sat in silence, not knowing how to react. He didn't mention what had just occurred, didn't explain, didn't show any signs of nervousness. He simply continued. It made me wonder, who was Mr. Braga, really? How could he act with such calm in a situation that would have left any of us panicking? I later learned that he had lived a life full of challenges, always maintaining his calm, his focus, his determination. He was more than just a Latin teacher. He was a man who knew the true meaning of courage. That day changed the way I saw people, especially those we underestimate or take for granted. I learned that sometimes, heroes are the ones we least expect, the ones who live their lives quietly, but when the situation demands it, they rise up and do what needs to be done. Mr. Braga, with his patience, knowledge, and above all, his quiet courage, was one of those heroes for me. And to this day, when I think of moments of difficulty, I remember his calm expression as he saved a life, and it gives me the strength to face my own challenges with the same determination. Story 2. In high school, gym class was the moment many of us eagerly looked forward to. The adrenaline of playing dodgeball, running across the court, feeling the thrill of competition, it was something that brought us all together, even if just for a brief period. However, for one of my classmates, those classes were nothing short of torture. He was the typical nerdy kid, the kind who preferred to spend recess reading or studying rather than participating in physical activities. He was quiet, shy, and in a way, invisible to most of us except when he became the target of a certain jerk in our class. During one of those classes, the dodgeball game was in full swing. The court was filled with shouts and laughter, but something was different that day. The class jerk, a guy who always seemed to have something to prove, decided that his favorite target would be the nerdy kid. Even after he was knocked out of the game, the jerk didn't stop. He kept throwing the ball at him, hitting him over and over again, laughing as he did. With each hit, I could see the nerdy kid's face contort with pain and humiliation, but he didn't say a word. He just stood there, quiet, as if he was used to it. But then, something changed. There was a tension in the air, a moment of silence that hummed there for a second before everything exploded. The nerdy kid, the one everyone thought was fragile, finally lost his patience. He stormed across the court with a speed no one expected. His eyes were locked on the jerk, and before any of us could react, he grabbed the guy's neck with both hands and started choking him. It was a surreal sight, seeing this kid, who was always so calm and withdrawn, transform into a force of pure rage, unleashing all the pent-up anger from months, maybe years, of being picked on. Being a bunch of teenagers, instead of intervening, we just froze, watching in shock, and then, inexplicably, we started cheering for him. It was as if, in that moment, we were witnessing some kind of poetic justice, seeing the guy who always thought he was better than everyone else finally being put in his place. The cheers echoed across the court, and the jerk, who was always so confident, suddenly looked lost, helpless in the hands of the kid he'd spent so much time tormenting. Of course, the incident didn't go unnoticed. Within minutes, the teacher stepped in, pulling the two apart. The nerdy kid was taken straight to the principal's office, where we all knew he would face the consequences of his actions. The jerk, on the other hand, was left there, rubbing his neck, still stunned by what had just happened. For all of us, there was a mix of satisfaction and concern. We knew the nerdy kid had gone too far, but we also understood why he did what he did. The principal suspended the nerdy kid for 3 days, a punishment that seemed inevitable. However, to those of us who had witnessed everything up close, it felt like an injustice. How could he be punished so harshly for finally standing up for himself? So, a group of us, driven by a sense of loyalty and maybe a bit of guilt, decided to go to the principal and explain the circumstances. We talked about how the jerk had been provoking the kid for months, how he had no choice but to react the way he did. And, surprisingly, the principal listened. The 3-day suspension was reduced to just 1 day. When the nerdy kid returned to school, he wasn't the same. He was still quiet, still preferred his books to mindless chatter, but there was a silent respect around him. No one messed with him anymore, and the jerk, who used to be the king of the class, was now more reserved, more cautious. That day changed the dynamics of our class forever. As for me, that experience taught me an important lesson about people. I learned that no matter how calm and controlled someone may seem on the outside, everyone has a breaking point. And when that limit is crossed, even the most peaceful individual can become a force to be reckoned with. I never looked at the nerdy kid the same way again, and honestly, I never looked at any of us the same way again.
Check out the next video, where I share even more valuable tips to change your life. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment on your experiences. Your participation is essential for us to grow together. And don't forget, don't let the ghosts of your mind control you.